Well, welcome to McLean Church Online. I'm so happy that you're here this week. I'm so happy that you're making church a priority. Here in Northwestern Pennsylvania, we can just sense spring is around the corner, and we're so excited because we're already talking about and planning our Easter services. So please stay connected with us, because before you know it, spring will be sprouting, Easter will be here, and we'll have all kinds of great information for you, our service times and locations. It's an exciting time to be a part of McLean Church. And if you want to be a part of McLean Church in a very significant and helpful way, you've got to check out our billboard campaign. This is one of the coolest ways that I've seen any organization really do effective and practical fundraising. So check this out. If you go to mcleanchurch.org, they've got this billboard page on here. mcleanchurch.org/billboard gets you to this page. And I love how practical ways that you can help the church. For $50, you can help the ministry of McLean Church online. For $20, you can help our maintenance and custodial staff. For $100, you can provide food for our food ministry. So many practical and affordable ways to breathe life into our church. So please, if you get a chance, go to this website, mcleanchurch.org/billboard. Check out the page. I guarantee God will show you a very easy but very significant and helpful way that you can support our church. Hey, and speaking of Easter and Lent, it is not too late to sign up to be a part of our 40-day Lent devotional series. We're doing this at McLean Church Online all through the YouVersion Bible app. We're walking through a study together, and hey, it's never too late to join. I will confess, I'm about 7 days behind. So join me and catch up on this great study. We'd love to have you log on using the Bible app each day. If you're interested in joining that group and walking through that study with us, we just got started and we've got plenty of time to go, and God has plenty to teach us all through the Bible app in this Lent study. Go to mcleanchurch.org/life-groups. That's mcleanchurch.org/life-groups, and you will click on the button that says Find a Life Group, and you're going to scroll down to the one that says YouVersion Bible app, Daily Devotions with Chris Norris. That's me. Sign up there, and I will send you the information that you need in order to sign up and join the study. Well, are you ready to worship today? Man, I know I am. So hey, let's do this. Worship team, take it away.
Hello, McLeaners, and welcome. I know there are probably times when we all feel lost. But there's good news. When we need a light to shine on our path, when we're not sure where to turn, we always have our rock, our Heavenly Father. So as we unite and lift up our voices in worship today, let us remember that we're never truly lost, and we'll always have a light to guide our way. You are the peace in my troubled sea. In the silence you won't let go. In the questions your truth will hold. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Oh, you are the peace in my troubled sea. Shining in the darkness, I will follow you. Oh, my lighthouse, I will trust the promise. You will carry me safe to shore, safe to shore, safe to shore, safe to shore. Tomorrow brings. to shore, safe to shore, safe to shore, safe to shore. When you're feeling lost, stuck out at sea, the waves grow high, the winds blow strong, in your heart believe there's a light that's shining, it's never going out. So don't give up now, don't lose hope, the future's looking bright. Far before us, you're the brightest, you will lead us through the storm. Far before us, you're the brightest, you will lead us through the storm. Hey! Far before us, you're the brightest, you will lead us through the storm. Far before us, you're the brightest, you will lead us through the storm. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness, I will follow you. Oh, my lighthouse, I will trust the promise, and you will carry me safe to shore, safe to shore, safe to shore, safe to la 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 lighthouse, la 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 lighthouse, la 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 lighthouse, through the storm, la 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 lighthouse.
Hello, welcome to another profile of the Passion. Malchus, the slave to the high priest, was just doing his job. When he was called up to go to the garden with the others, he dutifully grabbed his weapon and he went. And when they got to the garden and the signal was given, tensions were running high, emotions were exploding. Let's listen to what happened, reading from Luke 22. When the other disciples saw what was about to happen, they exclaimed, "Lord, should we fight? We brought the swords." And one of them struck at the high priest's slave, slashing off his right ear. Malchus's right ear is slashed off. The pain, the blood gushing. Let's listen to what happened next. But Jesus said, "No more of this." And he touched the man's ear and healed him. Jesus stops the chaos. He says, "No more of this," and he heals Malchus's ear. A miraculous healing. The pain is gone. The blood has stopped. Malchus has encountered Jesus. Despite his ill intentions and his wrongdoing, Jesus shows love and compassion. What does this tell us about Jesus and our relationship with him? I don't know about you, but oftentimes when I'm trying to do life on my own, my wrongdoings, my ill intentions, Jesus will often step in and say, "No more of this," and then demonstrate his love and compassion in my life. Today, let's reflect on that relationship we have with Jesus and how he may step into the chaos of our life and show love and compassion despite our wrongdoing. And may we look to Jesus to be empowered to love others and to show compassion to others despite their ill intentions and their wrongdoings toward us. Friends, let's take a moment and pray together. Father God, many times we make mistakes. We try to do things on our own. We confess our waywardness to you today. May we experience your love and compassion despite our wrongdoing. Father God, empower us to love others and to show compassion as Jesus has first done for us. We pray this through Jesus Christ, our Lord. As you go about your week and your life gets crazy, may you press the pause button, ask Jesus for help, and watch and see his love and compassion flow, not just for you, but also empowering to love others and have compassion for them. May you encounter Jesus this week.
Joyful, joyful, we adore you, God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before you, opening to the sun above. Melt the clouds of sin and sadness, drive the dark of doubt away. River of eternal gladness, fill us with the light of day. You are the one who saves. You are the one who saves. You are the one whose hands lift us from the grave. You are the light of life, the everlasting day. You are the one who takes our sins away. You are giving and forgiving, ever blessing, ever blessed. Fountain of the joy of living, ocean depths of happiness. You are the one who saves. You are the one who saves. You are the one whose hands lift us from the grave. You are the light of life, the everlasting day. You are the one who takes all our sins away.
Jesus, you are my rescue. Jesus, you are my rescue. I give you everything I am.
Everything I am.
Jesus, you are my rescue. Jesus, you are my rescue. I give you everything I am.
I give it all to you.
Jesus, you are my rescue. Jesus, you are my rescue. I give you everything I am. Jesus, you are my rescue. Jesus, you are my rescue. I give you everything I am.
You are giving and forgiving, ever blessing, ever blessed. Fountain of the joy of living, ocean depths of happy rest. You are the one who saves. You are the one who saves. You are the one whose hands lift us from the grave. You are the light of life, the everlasting day. You are the one who takes all our sins away. You are the one who takes all our sins away. You are the one who takes all our sins away.
Well, now it's a very important part of our service where we take a moment to give back to God through our offerings and our tithes. This is very important for the life and ministry of McLean Church. We talked earlier about our billboard campaign. Listen, it takes money to keep our church running and operating. And we are so proud of the work that we're doing in our region. We're so proud of the lives that we're affecting right within the walls or the virtual walls of our church. So please, if you want to breathe life into our church and continue to breathe life into our mission to eliminate barriers to give people access to Christ, we're here for it, and we would love your support. You can visit mcleanchurch.org/give to show you how you can get involved and how you can take part in giving back to God. Let me read a piece of scripture for you today as we set our hearts for the rest of the service. It comes from Psalm 16:11. It says, "You make known to me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore." Man, who wants to be a part of that? I know I do. Thank you for your generosity, church.
Well, today we're beginning season 3 of our Faith for a New Era series. And remember, this series is about re-examining and redefining our faith for this new era in which we find ourselves. And when we talk about faith in this series, what we're really talking about are the big ideas that we have about God, life, and the world. And we said on the first week of the series that we have some really helpful tools at our disposal to help us figure out just what we think about these 3 big issues. One of those tools is our reason. We have the ability to think, and we have the ability to think abstractly. This means we can think about ideas and concepts that we've never actually experienced. Our reason is a key tool in understanding what we believe about God, life, and the world. Another of the tools we have to figure faith out is our experience. What we believe has to work with how we actually live. Our faith has to make sense in the ordinary, everyday experiences that define our life. A faith that can only be believed but can't be lived, it's really no faith at all. Tradition is a third tool we have for defining our faith. How have people in the past viewed God, viewed life, and viewed the world? Past perspectives on these issues, they're not necessarily right. In fact, often they've been shown to be quite deficient. But in matters of faith, there has often been a consistent tradition. Some have called it a perennial tradition that aids us in thinking about God, life, and the world. And finally, we're fortunate to have the Scriptures to help us define our faith. These ancient writings from Judaism and Christianity contained for us in the book we call the Bible, they provide incredible insight into how God, life, and the world are to be understood and how these 3 ideas relate to each other. Now, in this series, we've been focusing primarily on the Scriptures, informed by our reason, experience, and tradition, to help us figure out what we think and how we should live. And if ever we needed to figure out what we believe and how we should live, it's now. We're in a new reality, new territory, a new era. We've not been in this place before. And to navigate this new era meaningfully and successfully, I think we need a very fluid and authentic faith. So we've been looking at one of the books in the Bible, the book of Isaiah, to help us figure our faith out. Now, until this week, most of the work we've done in this book has been background. We've tried to describe some of the big themes the book deals with, as well as describing some of the all-important historical and literary contexts from which the book arises. But beginning today with Season 3, we'll start in earnest to look at how the book of Isaiah speaks to these three big topics of faith, God, life, and the world. And we'll start by talking about God. Now, a few preliminaries on this topic. By nature, God, whatever you envision that entity to be, God is undefinable. The foundational essence of anyone or anything that you consider to be God is that that being or thing cannot be limited by definition. When you define something, you determine what that thing cannot be. But God, at least ontologically, cannot be so limited. As philosopher Pete Rowland says, God is the being without lack. As soon as I define something, I determine what it lacks. And God lacks nothing. Any definition or understanding we arrive at concerning God is necessarily incomplete. Now, that doesn't mean our understanding of God is insufficient. There are many things we don't fully understand in life, but we can still interact with and incorporate those things into our experience. What this does mean is that we hold our understanding of God with a necessary humility that recognizes we don't and never will have God fully figured out. Nor should we want to do that. Because the minute we have God defined and figured out, we no longer have a God, we have an idol. By nature, God is undefinable. So, how in the world are we supposed to understand or talk about God? How do you interact with or discuss something you cannot define? Well, you have that conversation using images and metaphors. People have always used images and metaphors to make what is undefinable concrete and real. So, for instance, try to define love. If you're in a relationship with someone you love, what does that mean? Define it. Explain it. Now, you can talk all around this topic, but you can never exhaustively define it. And that's a good thing. Because if you can fully define love, you have necessarily limited its power. If you can define what you mean when you say, I love you, in 500 words or less, what you're calling love isn't that big a deal. Love can't be limited by definition, and yet love is very real. So how do we talk about, describe, and interact with the concept of love? Well, we use images and metaphors. When REO Speedwagon released their 1984 hit, I Can't Fight This Feeling Anymore, very weird music video, but a great song, what were they doing? They were using an image to describe love. 10 years earlier, Dolly Parton sang Love is Like a Butterfly on the album by the same name. And what was she doing in that song? She was using a metaphor to explain what love is. When Clint Black sang When I Said I Do to his wife Lisa Hartman in 1999, By the way, arguably one of the best country music videos ever made. Black was holding his marriage up as the embodiment of love. Want to know what love is? Black was saying, look at what we have done to stay true to each other, and you'll begin to understand love. Image and metaphor. It's how we interact with what is undefinable. Image and metaphor is what Isaiah will use to talk about God. And one of the first images Isaiah will use to describe God is that of a vineyard owner. Isaiah describes God as a farmer who has planted a crop of grapes. Chapter 5 of the book of Isaiah contains a poem or a song. It's actually a love song about a vineyard owner and his vineyard. It's a song about a farmer and his land. The song is sung by Isaiah, but he tells us he is singing the song or reciting the poem on behalf of someone else. He calls the someone else his beloved, but what quickly becomes apparent is that the someone else, Isaiah's beloved, is God. God is the vineyard owner or the farmer, and the nation of Judah is the vineyard or the land. Several times in the Old Testament, the people of God are referred to as a vineyard, and Isaiah uses that imagery here. So listen to Isaiah's song, then let's talk about what we can learn about God from what Isaiah says. From Isaiah chapter 5, verses 1 through 7. I will sing for my beloved my love song concerning his vineyard. My beloved had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. He dug it and cleared it of stones and planted it with choicest vines. He built a watchtower in the midst of it and hewed out a wine vat in it. He expected it to yield grapes, but it yielded rotten grapes. And now, inhabitants of Jerusalem and people of Judah, judge between me and my vineyard. What more was there to do for my vineyard that I have not done in it? When I expected it to yield grapes, why did it yield rotten grapes? And now I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will remove its hedge, and it shall be devoured. I will break down its wall, and it shall be trampled down. I will make it a wasteland. It shall not be pruned or hoed, and it shall be overgrown with briars and thorns. I will also command the clouds that they rain no rain upon it. For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the people of Judah are his cherished garden. He expected justice, but saw bloodshed, righteousness, but heard a cry. Here is an image of God. God is like a vineyard owner. In this case, it's a metaphor. God is a vineyard owner. This image or metaphor is meant to make the concept or the idea of God real and concrete. How does the image do that? Well, think about what the image reveals to us about Isaiah's understanding of God. First, the image tells us that God is the source of Israel's life. God is the source of being or of existence. It is God who plants the vineyard. It is God who resources the vineyard. It is God who provides the conditions for growth. God is understood as the source of being in this song. And the song tells us that God holds the standard by which the vineyard will be evaluated. God makes the determination as to whether the vineyard has been productive or not. The second stanza says he expected it to yield grapes, but it yielded rotten grapes. It's God who makes this determination as to what is good or bad, whether the crop has been successful or not. And the song goes on to further define the standards by which God is evaluating the vineyard. The 7th stanza says, he expected justice, but saw bloodshed. Righteousness, but heard a cry. Justice and righteousness are the standards by which God is evaluating the vineyard. They are the basis by which God determines whether the grapes are good or bad. And finally, in this song, God is portrayed as bringing about the consequences of the vineyard's production or lack thereof. God will bring about certain things or cause certain things to happen as a result of the vineyard's failure to meet God's standards. Now, according to stanzas 5 and 6, God will remove the vineyard's hedge and break down its wall. It will be made a waste and the rain will not fall on it. God is portrayed as overseeing the consequence or the effect of the vineyard's lack of production and performance. These are the images Isaiah uses to describe God, who again by nature is undefinable. And these are images that would have been readily and easily understood in the agrarian culture of the ancient Near East. Interestingly, they are also images that Jesus will use several hundred years later to describe and talk about God. So, what do the images mean for us? How do they help us think about God? And how do they help us define a faith for a new era? Well, first of all, these images challenge us to see God as source. God is the being from which life, in the case of the song, the vineyard, originates and flows. There's something outside of me and beyond me from which I originate. I'm not here by my own or on my own. There's something outside of and beyond me from which my life flows. Jesus would use the image of God as a father to bring this idea of God as source home to the people to whom he was speaking. Now, if there is something beyond me and greater than me from which I originate, then it would make sense that my understanding of life must be rooted in this source of life. The more I understand about the source of life, the more I understand about life itself. Living in recognition and awareness of this source outside of myself gives me proper perspective on my existence. Recognizing or raising my awareness of God as the source of life has traditionally been called worship. And this explains why the consistent worship of God has historically been so important. Worship is not about seeking God's favor. It is about bringing my consciousness into awareness of God's role as the source of my life. What we do each week when we gather in person or virtually for church is an important practice that consistently reminds me that God is source. Second, Isaiah's images remind me that God holds the standard by which life is evaluated. Now, this is such a freeing concept to understand. How do I determine what is good or bad, right or wrong, productive or not productive, beneficial or harmful? In short, how do I determine how to live? This is the question that consciously or unconsciously consumes all of us every single day. From Isaiah's perspective, God provides the answer to that question. God is the being from which that which is right, that which is good, that which is true, that which is beneficial, all originate. God holds the standard by which a meaningful, a successful life is obtained. And what's great about Isaiah's song is that the song specifically defines what the standards are by which this meaningful or successful life we all seek is obtained. In stanza 7, the song talks about justice and righteousness. These are God's standards by which the success of a life is determined. Now, what do we mean by justice and righteousness? Well, by justice, we mean treating people as they deserve to be treated. Jesus would make clear that this means acting in love toward all people. Bloodshed is the poem's antithesis to justice. Violence is the antithesis of acting in love. And as Jesus would teach, violence is not just physical. Violence has its origins in my words and attitudes. How do I live according to God's standard? I act with justice. I treat all people with the dignity, respect, and kindness they deserve. And I'll tell you, if you really let that idea sink in, it should be mind-blowing and life-changing. By righteousness, we mean acting rightly, particularly when we are given opportunity to help or care for others. When someone is in need, what is the right thing to do? It is right to appropriately respond to that need. Righteousness means I live with an attitude of compassion toward the people I encounter. I'm sensitive to the needs and the hurts around me, and I respond to those needs and hurts as God resources and directs me. If you want to know how to live, if you want to know what really matters in life, these images reveal it for us. Treat the people I encounter each day with the love and compassion they deserve. How are we doing? Measuring up to that standard. Really, how are we doing? Finally, Isaiah's picture of God in this song, it reminds me that people reap what they sow. There's a sense that in the world God created, what goes around comes around. In a complex and mystical sense, we seem to often harvest what we plant. When we violate the standards of justice and righteousness, life seems often to revolt against us. That's what Isaiah was trying to get the people of his day to see. It's a central idea behind Jesus' presentation of the kingdom of God to his followers. A kingdom in which the last becomes first and the servant becomes the master. It's what the Apostle Paul seemingly had in mind when he wrote in the book of Galatians, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows." Wow! Talk about giving us insight into God, life, and the world. This song does that in images from the ancient world that still make considerable sense today. God is the source of life. My life finds meaning the more I live in awareness of this source. Is this what Jesus was getting at when he told his followers that the most important thing they could do was to love God with all of their hearts, minds, and souls? Interesting, isn't it? And God gives me a standard for living: justice and righteousness. could it be the most important thing I could possibly do with my life? The most important goal I could achieve be to live my ordinary, everyday life, treating people with the kindness, compassion, and respect God desires. Could this be why Jesus told his followers that the second most important thing they could do was to love their neighbors as themselves? Maybe Jesus had read Isaiah. And God has designed a world in which acting with justice and righteousness, love and compassion, creates outcomes in my life that are positive and good. Now, this does not mean at all that I'll be wealthy, powerful, or successful. In fact, it may mean just the opposite. I may be poor, powerless, and a failure. But it does mean that I will live with true joy and peace as a citizen of God's kingdom. I will live with a level of life fulfillment and satisfaction that wealth, power, and success cannot provide. Again, is this perhaps what Jesus meant when he taught that my kingdom is not of this world? Isaiah's Vineyard song, it's just an image. It's not meant to be an exhaustive description of God, and certainly to overanalyze the image is to destroy it. But to receive this image from the ancient world takes us a long way towards an authentic understanding of God, life, and the world. It helps us think about how we should live and interact with this present moment of time. And it helps us further define our faith for this new era. So thank you, Isaiah. Maybe we can let this ancient prophet teach us more about this life that we are trying to live and understand.
Letting go of every single dream, I lay each one down at your feet. Every moment of my wandering never changes what you see. I've tried to win this war, I confess. My hands are weary, I need your rest. Mighty warrior, king of the fight. No matter what I face, you're by my side. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. Truth is, you know what tomorrow brings. There's not a day ahead you have not seen. So in all things, be my life and breath. I want what you want, Lord, and nothing less. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you.
Man, what another great message today. I've really enjoyed this message series, Faith in a New Era. You know, it's just such a practical, applicable teaching to my life and hopefully yours. And I heard a great quote today in a book I'm reading. It said, when we get to heaven, God doesn't say to us, well done, good and important servant, right? He says, well done, good and faithful servant. Faith is such an important part of our lives, and every day we're refining it and reshaping it, and that's okay. And that's what I've loved about what Pastor Brian has taught us throughout this series. So thanks for being with us today. I want to encourage you to stay connected. So many great things as always happening in our church. Easter's right around the corner, so stay tuned for details about that. In the meantime, get involved with a small group. Get involved with our billboard campaign. Stay connected to God and stay connected to one another. And we'll see you back here again next week at McLean Church Online.